Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Nadenia Buntin. We're going to be discussing her amazing book, The Big Game. That's available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com. And I do want to quickly point out that Nadenia was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by one of the best publishers in the business, Author Reputation Press. So people, listen, I mean it. If you are a writer out there listening in currently and you have a book that you've created and you need help moving it, well, I'm going to give you some fantastic advice. Contact ARP. All right, they're one of the best in the business to do it, and they specialize in taking your literary creation to the next level. Head on over to authorreputationpress.com today and see how they can help you. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Nadenia here on the line. This book carries so much weight and is so valuable because it's going to help your children understand that your behavior has consequences. And it's a fantastic journey that they're going to want to take. It's a wonderful journey that you can take with them. And it's an even better gift for you to put on someone else's desk so that they can take with their children as well. And at the end of the day, Nadenia is the expert. She's written the book. She's done the research. She's going to be able to articulate it much better than I ever could. So do me a favor. Sit back, strap in, and get ready for a wonderful ride. Nadenia, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction. And thank you very much for being a guest. How you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Absolutely. Nadenia, this is a pleasure having you here as a guest with us. We love what you're doing here. We love what your book symbolizes and what it represents. And I think it's a fun book with a fantastic message for children. Now, I know we have a lot of information to go over pertaining to it, but let's hold off slightly. Start off by telling us a little bit more about yourself and your background.
I'm the youngest of 6 children. I was born and raised in Texas. I moved to Mississippi in 1980, where I went to college and met my husband. I've been writing since I was a child, but just recently I sent my book in for publication just to see what would happen.
Nadenia, I wasn't planning on going here so soon, but after that, how could I go anywhere else? You said you've been writing since you were a child. So this is something that is obviously in your blood, right? You eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. Talk to us about where that love for creative writing comes from.
Well, I started out when I was a child taking my spelling words and writing stories about using my spelling words, and my teacher would encourage me to do that. It was a way for me to learn how to spell and also learn the meaning of my spelling words.
Mm-hmm. Well, Nadenia, without further ado, the anchor is all about your book, The Big Game. Tell us a little bit more about it, please.
It's about a 10-year-old. It starts out as a 9-year-old boy, and he has a love for baseball. So for his 10th birthday, he's taken to a professional baseball game where he meets his idol, and he receives a signed baseball. During the story, he loses the baseball thanks to the bully that's in the story. And it's all about how he gets his baseball back, and he leads his team to the Little League World Series.
Nadenia, let's go back to inspiration for a second. What inspired this particular narrative?
I am a former teacher, and a lot of my students enjoyed playing baseball during their recess time. So that was where, and I also worked for the Texas Rangers baseball team when I was in high school.
Oh, wow. Well, that is fantastic. You know, I do want to take a quick opportunity here and point out and really just offer thanks and congratulations, because I understand. I had a very brief stint in education myself, and I have a lot of educators around me, either through family or friends. And educators never get the amount of credit that they deserve. And listen, they damn sure don't get paid enough. So I want to take an opportunity and thank you for the job that you did and continue to do through your creative endeavors on shaping and helping mold the mind of future generations, because it is something that is so special and often goes unrecognized.
Right.
Nadenia, when it comes to this book, The Big Game, Of course, this could have been when it comes to creative writing, you could have chosen a particular age group outside of children. You could have chosen different messages to have, but you specifically focused on this age group. Your main protagonist is 10 years old. Talk to us about that influence and why you chose that age group to really write for.
Basically, my teaching experience is around that age group. Mm-hmm. The majority of my teaching experience is with that age group. I really think that that's an age group that is in that molding, that sensitive time of their life when they can be molded and they can learn, from their experiences and learn about consequences and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, listen, I think you hit the nail right on the head there. We know that around that age, kids are very impressionable, and they're being shaped and developed by the influences that are around them. So for you to infuse this fantastic book with such a positive message, I think you're doing a lot of good here, right? You're doing a lot of service to the children out there. People, again, we're here on the line with Nadenia Buntin. We're talking about her book, The Big Game, which is available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com. Head on over there today and pick up your copies. This is a fantastic journey you're going to want to take with your children. Nadenia, next question that I'd love to get into, and I think we've already started to go into it, but I think it's so important that it's worth doubling down on and repeating. Two-part question here. First and foremost, who would you say is your intended audience with this book? And second part, what is the main message that you really hope that they take from it once they complete reading it?
The age group is between 9 and 12, and I'm hoping that they learn that, their consequences and what they do, that has consequences. What their behavior is has consequences, positive and negative. And, they need to learn from that, and it will help them as they grow into an adult, to learn that their behaviors, and maybe they'll change the behaviors to a more positive attitude and behavior when they are adults.
Thinking outside of the box here with this next one, but, Nadenia, I often talk to writers, and one of the pieces of advice that they always give, and one of the things that they always resort back to with their writing creations is write what you know. So I want to ask you here, when it comes to this book or any other books that you're planning on writing in the future, and we'll touch up on the specific book that you're in the process of writing just in a moment, but when it comes to this book, The Big Game, are there any characters that you yourself can identify with, or are there any characters that you developed in that book that maybe you developed around a certain child that you taught during your education career?
Really and truly, there's not. The characters are make-believe. I think I relied on the fact that I have taught 10-year-olds, and I kind of know how they think. And it's not one specific child, but it seems to be all of the children wrapped into one. Yeah. And I think that I can relate to Josh, the main character, having to learn from his consequences. I made mistakes when I was younger, and I had to learn that my mistakes had consequences, and some of them were positive and some of them were negative. And I think that's where I drew from, is my childhood and the children that I have taught in the past.
There you have it. Nadenia, I love the message of consequences here, because I think that is so important for us to continually come back to and recognize. I don't care if you're 10 years old, if you're 20 years old, or if you're 50 years old. It's a notion that you constantly have to understand and be mindful of, right? And I don't know exactly when it clicked for me, but I do remember at a point, at a very early age, I started to shift my perspective and understanding that, listen, as much as we'd like to avoid it, life is going to be filled with challenges and adversity, right? You just can't avoid it. Again, that's going to lead to wisdom and help you be better prepared for the next one down the line. But I remember shifting my perception and understanding that there are no wins and losses in life, okay? There are always wins, and then there are lessons. And even in those moments where you may not get the desired outcome, right? Even in those moments where you make a decision and you understand the consequences coming along with them aren't the greatest, you can still find a silver lining in those moments of what otherwise would be categorized as a negativity, right? Or a negative time. And there are lessons to be learned there and to be gained. And I think that when we're talking about the big game, there is a lot there for children to latch onto, and parents alike, right? So the education doesn't stop, in the classroom, out of the classroom. Nadenia she's an educator at heart, right? I love it. Nadenia, what would you say was a highlight for you in writing this book? Or if not a highlight, something that surprised you that you weren't anticipating before you began?
Actually, the story started years ago, and I reached the block, and I put it away for a long time. And my children found the copy that I had started and read it, and they said, Mom, you need to finish this. And my youngest daughter is an educator. She has a degree in English. And so she was basically the promoter. Mom, you need to finish this. And she did, the proofreading and some of the editing and gave me suggestions on, based on her experience in the classroom, Mom, maybe you should change this or, add this to the book. And so she was a big motivator in my writing and finishing the book and sending it off to be published.
That is beautiful. So it ultimately became a family affair, which is never a bad thing.
Yes.
That's fantastic. It's beautiful.
Yes, it did.
People, listen, as I mentioned, this is not the only book that Nadenia has written. Okay, The Big Game was ultimately the anchor that we wanted to focus on today. But there's another book that's still in creation, hasn't been released just yet. But I want you to continue to check back into her Amazon and Barnes & Noble pages frequently, because the next book is called The Thompson Manor Ghost. Now, I can tell right from the title that this would have been a narrative that as a younger, growing up, I was a huge fan of Edgar Allan Poe. And I carried around his complete works with me when I think I was in the 6th or 7th grade. I was obsessed with horror stories and dark narratives, right? So when we're talking about the Thompson Manor Ghost, listen, I don't think it's too far to assume that this is a ghost narrative, okay? And this is something that's right up my alley. But as we have a few minutes here before we close out, Nadenia, talk to us about that narrative and give us a brief synopsis of what it entails.
Basically, the same two characters that are in The Big Game, Josh and Clint, they are in the Manor Ghost book. And Clint is the main character this time, and he's dared to go in this old manor at night and spend a couple of hours. He's dared by the town bully to go into this house. And while he's in the house, he meets the ghost of the house. And they become friends, and he helps the ghost to fulfill his last will and testament, his last request before he died. And basically that's it. You have to read the book to find out what happens.
Yeah, you have it. Smart woman there. Listen, I love that, right? Because how many of us can relate? And I know that there's a lot of you, okay? I feel like in every neighborhood across the United States, there's always that one house. There's always that one building that is old, it's decrepit, it's boarded up, and it has some type of aura around it, right? Where the kids in that neighborhood look at it as if it's haunted. I know I had one. In every neighborhood that I've ever lived in, there was always that one house. And having that interest of potentially finding a window that we could sneak our way into and see it. I mean, this is something fresh out of my childhood. I love these narratives. I know you do. I know you all do as well. And I said it before, I'm going to say it again. Amazon, Barnes & Noble are where you have to go. Nadenia Buntin is the author you have to thank for bringing it to your table. Head on over there, pick up your copies, and just get lost in it. These are wonderful books for your children to embark upon. And as a parent, you know you can feel confident and secure that I think there's something to be said about just a good, clean book for kids to just get lost in. And you don't have to worry from a parent's perspective. You know the things that they're reading about are going to be appropriate, right? And I think that says a lot, given where we currently are in today's society. Nadenia, as we close out here, I would be doing my listening audience a disservice if I didn't ask this next one. We know about your writing background. We know about these two fantastic books. I'm hoping there's so much more on the horizon. But it is no surprise to me that you have gone through the gauntlet of writing your books, but you've also gone through the adventures of getting them published. And anybody that's been through that process understands that writing the book is just half the battle, right? There's so much more that's still at play here. But I want to pick your brain a bit.
Right.
For any new writers out there listening into this broadcast currently, what is some advice that you'd be able to offer them?
Basically, write what you know. Use your background, whether it's teaching, whether it's, whatever the background is. Use your background and do your research. I did a lot of research on Little League baseball when I was writing The Big Game. And I learned a lot from my research. So, do your research, depend upon your background. And, basically that's all I can say.
There you have it. And listen, that's all that needs to be said. Okay, Nadenia, this has been a fantastic interview. Listen, people, The Big Game was the first one. The Thompson Manor Ghost was the second. And again, as I mentioned, I hope that there is plenty more on the horizon because you're going to get lost in this. Your children are going to love it, and they're going to keep coming back for more. Nadenia, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Thank you.